So in my last video we talked about decimals and tenths and hundredths. So if you remember, when we have a box or square that's divided up into 10 equal pieces, each column is worth 1/10. So this square in front of us is a tenths square. Now if we were to take each of those columns and divide them up into 10 equal pieces, we would have something that looks like this, which is a hundredths square. And it is named as such because each square is 1/100th. There are 100 squares in this entire box. But that isn't where decimals stop. Decimals can keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So if we were to take each of these boxes and divide each individual box into 10 pieces, we would come up with this image before us, which looks kind of crazy, but this is the thousandths grid. And you guessed it, there are 1,000 tiny little squares or rectangles in this picture. That is what happens when we keep going farther and farther. And if we use our place values, we can see how this works. Now remember, when we think of our place values, we start off with our units, and that's our whole numbers, so I'll just randomly say 0 whole numbers. After our units, to the right, we have a decimal point. Then we have our tenths, which is still a full column, even if it's in the thousandths grid, it's still one full column. And then we have the hundredths, then we have the hundredths, which is still just one of these boxes. And then after that we have our thousandths. So it is our third place value. So if I were to say we have 123 thousandths, I would have to first shade in one whole column, like so. I would have to shade in 2 boxes. Now it's going to be very hard for me to shade in 3 thousandths, 3 of those little rectangles, so I'm going to try to zoom in. Look at those, all those rectangles right there. So if I just shaded in 1, 2, 3 of them, and then we zoom out, I will be representing there 123 thousandths. Now unfortunately, thousandths isn't the smallest we can get. We can keep getting smaller and smaller if we keep dividing our thousandths grid into smaller and smaller pieces. The next one will be 10 thousandths, then 100 thousandths, and so forth and so on. It really mirrors our place values for the whole numbers, except there is never going to be a units in decimals. It's just units and tenths, hundredths, units, tenths, hundredths, and thousandths. That's all we're going to have to worry about. And just like if we're reading larger numbers, we would write this out as 123 thousandths. We have to say thousandths because we are going all the way to the thousandths place value. We can't say hundredths or tenths. Now let's see if you can come up with the decimals that I'm creating in our thousandths grid. What if I showed you this? Take a look at how much I've shaded in and see if you can figure out the decimal. Well, if we're going off of our place values, in our units we have 0, because we don't have any holes. We've got our decimal point. I've shaded in 2 full columns, which is 2 tenths. I've shaded in 3 individual boxes, which is our hundredths, so we got 3 in the hundredths. And then if we count up all those little lines in the thousandths boxes, I've shaded in 7. So I have created 237 thousandths. Now I'm not going to write them out as a word form, but just like before, we would just write out the number 237, and then we can put thousandths at the end. Or if we really want to be precise, we can say 0 and 237 thousandths. Remember that the decimal point means the word and. Try one more now. Pause the video, take another look at our grid, see if you can figure out the decimal that I've created this time. Well, I have created 5 tenths. I have 5 full tenths shaded in. I have 9 hundredth boxes, and then I have 8 tiny thousandths. So I've created the decimals 0 and 598 thousandths. Now let's try one more just to see how it looks if we have a empty place value, if we don't have any hundredths. So now take a look at this shadings, see how many boxes I've shaded in, how many tenths, how many hundredths, how many thousandths, and try to create a decimal on your own. Go ahead and pause the video. Well, this time we have 1 whole tenth shaded in. We have 0 hundredth boxes. I don't have any full hundredth boxes besides the ones that are in the tenths column. And then I have 4 thousandths shaded in. So we've created the decimal 0 and 104 thousandths. Just like before, we would write out the words 104, and then we put thousandths after it. So just to show how it would look, we'd write 104 thousandths. And there we have it.